Let me tell you a story of what actually happened here. What is now known as the Barbados Slave Codes, and the reason as to why it is called this. Barbados, not just a place where the soil is fertile and rich with vitamins, but a place to vacation at, relaxing by the beach and chilling under the trees while having a drink in one's hand. However, this is now. Things weren't always like this, especially in the 1600s. It was 1627. English colonizers had begun to settle in Barbados, an eastern Caribbean island, to expand their territory. The primary reason for coming to Barbados was for planting sugar, so that England might avoid having to buy sugar from other European nations that produce sugar on their own Caribbean islands. The English saw how strong the demand for sugar was. Since sugar cane grew naturally on Barbados, the English saw Barbados as a lucrative opportunity. However, the Englishmen who wanted to engage in this business had to decide who to send to Barbados to grow, harvest, and process the sugarcane into refined sugar. This was not an easy task, but these Englishmen did have a number of Irish prisoners serving various sentences. They decided on a way for these Irish prisoners to work off their sentences on Barbados' sugar plantation. They sent thousands of indentured Irish prisoners to Barbados. As the years of growing and exporting these materials continued, the English began to think of a better way for the crop to be harvested and exported faster. They needed a higher efficiency route, as well as a way that was cheaper, because the Irish indentured servants did receive some form of salary, even though they were indentured. By the 1670s, African slaves, a cheaper source of labor being used throughout the Caribbean island, became the alternative to Irish indentured servants. As the English continued to expand their plantations, they began importing African slaves in increasing numbers. Between 1627 and 1807, more than 400,000 Africans, mainly originated from West Africa, had been brought to Barbados as slaves to work on sugar plantations. The English planters would request and receive more slaves whenever they believed they needed more for the plantations. The Africans were viewed as nothing more than interchangeable machine parts in the process of sugar production. The treatment experienced by the Africans was among the most inhumane in human history. Starting in 1640, Africans were thought of as inferior to Englishmen. Africans were not thought to have the capacity to be intelligent, in consideration of how dark skin color was defined as life of lesser value than light skin color. Legal codes naturally evolved out of these attitudes. Although the English were continually resupplied with Africans, they felt the need to have restrictions or rules set in motion when it came to controlling the labor of African slaves. The Barbados Slave Code of 1661 created a way for planters to be able to have full capacity to control their slaves by any means they felt necessary, without any legal repercussions. The Barbados Slave Code was originally enacted to serve both parties, trying to benefit the slaves and the planters. But it did not go according to plan. Slave owners were to protect their slaves from cruelty. But they didn't even do that. This was going through the mind of the Englishmen. Negroes are a heathenish, brutish, and uncertain, dangerous kind of people. Yet we will know by the right rule of reason, in order we are not to leave them to the arbitrary, cruel, and outrageous wills of every evil-disposed person, but so far to protect them, as we do many other goods and chattels, and also somewhat farther as being created men, though without the knowledge of God in the world. The slaves did receive one positive from the Barbados Slave Code, the ability to have a change of clothing once a year. The planters, on the other hand, were provided with many new ways to keep the slaves in line. They had the right and the authority to chastise, whip, brand, lacerate, cripple, set them on fire, or murder them with no negative consequences. The reason is during this time the English common law, which included the right to a jury and a judge, was not offered to the Africans, showing that they did not have the same rights as the planters. Africans were unable to be assured any of these statutes if their English masters harmed them in any way. This is where the Barbados slave codes come from. This is the origin story of how it came to be and how life was different back then.